This begins Media 2 in the deposition of Sheriff Joseph Arpaio on the record at 11:49 a.m.
Sheriff, you've had a break, correct?
Yes, yes,
And you had the opportunity to confer with your two lawyers here this morning?
yes,
Did you confer with them?
yes.
Is there any part of your testimony that you want to change or modify or supplement at this time?
No.
Okay. Now, Sheriff, before we took the break, you testified that the media comes to you. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And that you don't go to the media.
No, I didn't say that.
Do you go to the media too?
My public relations people do go to the media.
Who are your, when you say your public relations people, Sheriff Arpaio, tell me what you mean by that.
Well, we
Go ahead.
every large organization has a public information office. I do too,
And what is that for?
to deal with the news media.
Why do you have that?
Many reasons. Just about every day we're receiving information from the media, whether it's to retrieve information of this office and also to communicate with the media.
Is that part of your job as Maricopa County's Chief Law Enforcement Officer?
It's my job running an agency, a law enforcement agency that everyone deals with the media.
Who's your spokesperson for dealing with the media, Sheriff?
We have maybe three detention officer, deputy sheriff, and director of that section of my office.
Who, do you know what a press conference is?
Yes.
And Sheriff, I don't mean to patronize you. I figured that you knew what a press conference was. The reason why I'm asking you is because it's got to be clear for the record. You understand that, right?
Yes.
Who gives press conferences at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office on your behalf? Who do you delegate that to?
That goes to the public information office.
And the public information officer will have a press conference on behalf of you, Sheriff?
Sometimes I would participate, sometimes they would. They very active in dealing with the media on the air.
What is your understanding of a press conference?
Well, my understanding would be when there's a subject matter that the media is interested in, they start calling. Sometimes it's best to do it all at once and not have to talk to each individual media outlet, and do it at once, and that would be considered a press conference.
Okay. Who gives press conferences at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office?
Check the form.
It could be the members of my public information office.
You give press conferences too, right?
There are occasions when I will speak before the press.
How often do you give press conferences?
I don't know how many times, but we do. I get involved on several occasions.
Okay. We're in July, right?
Yes.
Have you given any press conferences this month?
I gave one last night.
Regarding what? The serial killer?
Actually, is it a press conference? There's a thin line, okay, what you call a press. That's why I'm hesitating, what you call a press conference. But this is something that happened, and I decided to go public and get it done all at one time.
You decided?
Yes.
No one
On that-
decided for you, right?
No, the public information officer let me know that the media was, they were interested, and I decided to talk to the press.
Sheriff, when you give a press conference or when you talk to the press, like, and it's on film and there are questions and answers, who makes the decision that you're going to preside at that press conference on behalf of your office? Is it you or is it one of your subordinates?
It could be both. It could be them suggesting that we do the press conference. It could be me suggesting that, that I would want to be there. Or it all depends.
Do you keep records or recordings of all your press conferences?
We, I think we do. Our office does. I don't know about all of them, but we do have a system sometimes where we can record it ourselves.
Have you ever heard of the Gilbert 20 or the Gilbert 22?
Which case are you talking about?
Well-
I don't know. Gilbert. I heard of the Gilbert 22.
What is that?
I think that was an organization we're concerned about the animals that died in Gilbert.
Over at Green Acre?
Yes.
Okay. Did you give any press conferences regarding what the events that transpired at the Green Acre over in Gilbert involving the death of over a dozen dogs?
If I recall, I may have given one, what you call a press conference, getting everybody together.
Who decided to do that?
I think it was conjunction with the my public, relations office. It was sort of a controversial situation, and why not talk to everybody at the same time?
So did you decide to go speak to the press, or did your staff direct you to go speak to the press?
If I recall, it could have been a mutual decision.
Let me get one thing straight, though. Sheriff, your subordinates don't tell you what to do they advise you.
They advise and recommend, and that's another management I mentioned before. I delegate, but I do listen to what people may have a question or some advice.
But you don't speak to the press unless you believe it's appropriate, right?
I had the final say
That I
as to
understand.
whether I want to talk to the media or not.
And you only speak to the media when you believe it's appropriate, right?
Yes.
Have you ever heard of a guy named Tom Lovejoy?
Yes.
Who's he?
He was a sergeant, I believe, on the police department.
Which police department?
Chandler, was it? Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever spoken about him?
About him?
Yeah.
Yes.
What'd you say?
Checked it for him.
That was an investigation that my office did on him. I never talked to him, no.
Okay. Did you ever give a press conference regarding Tom Lovejoy?
I may have, I don't recall.
And your office investigated Tom Lovejoy?
Yes.
For what?
Animal cruelty.
What'd he do?
I don't have all the nuts and bolts of it, but in general, it wasn't something I got involved with like I don't during an investigation, but I believe our animal cruelty unit investigated him.
He allegedly engaged in some type of cruelty to animals?
That I can recall, I believe he left his canine in his vehicle for 14 hours, or 12, 14 hours. Once again, I don't get involved in the nuts and bolts, I'm talking in generalities. And he was arrested for animal cruelty, I believe.
Did you authorize his arrest?
I go by what the investigators do. I don't authorize every arrest that's made, which is many arrests every day are made by my office.
I understand that, Sheriff, but that wasn't my question. My question was more specific than that. My question was, did you authorize your subordinates to arrest Tom Lovejoy for animal cruelty?
I did not authorize. That was their decision. They had the evidence to cause that arrest.
Did you approve of Mr. Lovejoy's arrest after he was arrested?
What is that? Approve after he was? Did I approve of it? Is that?
Yeah.
No, my job was that the arrest was made pursuant to my detectives conducted an investigation and then turned it over to the prosecutors.
I understand that. But my question was, after Mr. Lovejoy was arrested by your subordinates, did you approve of the arrest?
I don't approve or disapprove of arrest. There is no form or anything else that I get involved with. That's the investigating officer that does all the reporting.
Did you think it was a good arrest?
I have confidence in my detectives.
Did you think that your detectives' arrest of Mr. Lovejoy was a lawful arrest?
Did I think? I said again, I go by what my detectives, how they operate.
And I heard you, and I respect that.
Yes.
But my question's a little bit different than that. Did you know what arrests can be lawful or unlawful, right?
It depends.
Have you ever heard of something called a false arrest?
Yes.
What is your understanding, Sheriff Arpaio, of the terms false arrest?
That's a legal question that I'm not sure how to answer that.
Give me your best, honest answer.
I mentioned probable cause. I can go on, but many arrests are made that maybe do not turn into a conviction, but that's not a false arrest.
Well, have you ever heard the term a false arrest?
Yes.
What is your understanding of it?
Once again, that is a legal question, and every case is different, and I haven't come up with any in my law enforcement career that I could ever say that someone was framed. I would probably say when you frame someone, maybe a false arrest.
So, is your definition of a false arrest, Sheriff Arpaio, an arrest that results from a frame-up?
If the intent of the investigator is to investigate a case in good conscience, and if that case results in not a conviction, that's something that you have to look at the judiciary and to the prosecutor.
So is it your testimony, Sheriff Arpaio, that a false arrest is that arrest that doesn't result in a conviction?
No, I
Well-
didn't say that. I said a false arrest could be, the way I look at it, where it is framed, no evidence whatsoever, no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, and no investigation.
So if you have reasonable suspicion to arrest someone, that precludes the arrest from being adjudicated subsequently as a false arrest.
No, I didn't say that. I said
That's a question.
no. I don't look at it that way.
Okay, how do you look? Why do you? So, do you disagree with this statement? If you don't have reasonable suspicion to arrest someone, that's a false arrest.
No, I didn't say that.
Why don't you agree with that?
I would think it would have to do with the further as to why was that decision made? Was there acting in good faith, good conscience?
So if someone is acting in good faith, that precludes them from making a false arrest? Is that your testimony?
Once again, that's a legal term that I'm not going to answer. You're asking me legal terms, and I'm not a lawyer to go into words, what a word means, and so on. Every case is different. That's why we have the system that we have.
But Sheriff, you're a law enforcement officer, right?
Yes.
And as a law enforcement officer in the field, you actually are the individual who helps enforce the law, right?
I'm going to say again that I delegate to my detectives. They are well trained and they know what probable cause is, or suspicion, or facts of a case. And I'm not going to second guess their decisions unless it's so obvious that someone has been framed or what have you. Now, how cases turn out sometimes, it's not the detective's decision. Sometimes it has to do with prosecution and judiciary system. So when you say what is a false arrest, I just can't give you that answer.
Well, I'll give you a answer that I think is correct and ask you what you think about it. A false arrest is an arrest that lacks probable cause. Do you agree with that?
No,
Why don't you agree with that?
because it all depends on the situation. You could argue, is information enough to follow through? I'm not going to get into every investigation what constitutes something that could be called a false arrest.
Have you ever heard of now there are consequences? Well, let me phrase it as a question. And I'm asking you this in your capacity as our sheriff. Sheriff, are there consequences for arresting somebody without probable cause?
All depends on the circumstances.
Tell me what it would depend on.
I don't know. Every case is different. I don't know what the circumstances could be. I do know when my detectives act in good faith and they conduct investigations, which they do. If it turns out to be that there's no conviction, that's not up to us.
That's up to the
decide.
jury, right?
It's up to the prosecutor, and if it gets up to the judicial system, which doesn't have to be a jury. I'm not going to split
True.
hairs here, but I'm not trying to argue with you.
It's all right.
Just trying to answer your legal questions that you're asking me.
Understand. Now, in reference to Tom Lovejoy, do you believe that your office's arrest of him was lawful?
Yes.
Why do you believe that?
I believe we had the evidence.
What was the evidence?
Once again, I don't run these cases. You talk about nuts and bolts of an investigation. So my detectives are well trained in this type of activity, decided to file charges on him.
I understand. And Sheriff, I told you that I'd tell you everyone who came into the room. The young man who just came into the room,
Hi, Austin.
that,
Never met the guy, but
you knew him.
well, I don't know
Austin,
if
you
I
called
knew
him by his name. That's Austin Flake. He had a car problem, and that's why he's late. So we apologize, Sheriff, for the interruption. Now, Sheriff, was Mr. Lovejoy convicted?
I don't believe he was.
Do you agree with that?
No,
Why?
because what I hear from my detectives, they had a pretty good, they had the evidence.
What did they say that makes you believe that he shouldn't have been acquitted?
I don't remember, but I do know that they did an excellent job.
And when you say they, specify for me, if you would, who that pronoun refers to individually.
I don't have the names of the detectives, but detectives, or if it was, but I believe it was our animal cruelty unit.
Who's Dave Tromby?
He's the one of our executive chiefs.
So is he part of your command staff?
Yes,
Do you trust him?
yes,
Is he competent?
yes,
Is he honest?
yes.
You don't have any reason to believe he'd ever lie, do you?
No,
Now, who is Marie Tromby?
she's a detective in the animal cruelty.
Is Marie Tromby related to David Tromby?
Yes,
What's their relation?
I believe that's Dave Tromby's sister.
Okay. Do you let them work together? Not
They
that there'd be anything
They
wrong
don't,
with
they
it.
don't work together. He's way up there. There's command people underneath him.
Now, Dave Tromby's in the animal cruelty unit.
No,
What is the name of that unit?
so we call it the animal cruelty unit.
Is Dave Tromby part of that?
He's in charge of all enforcement and investigative services for the whole organization.
Okay, so he's in charge of enforcing the law for your offices in Maricopa County.
Yeah, you could call him the enforcement intelligence. So he's and that animal cruelty is just one of many units that comes under his command.
Was his sister Marie Tromby ever serving under his command in the animal cruelty unit at your office?
Not directly.
Indirectly?
Yes, because he is in charge of all the enforcement and intelligence units and patrol units.
I understand. Now, Marie Tromby, have you ever met her?
Yes.
Have you ever worked with her?
Once again, I'm going to say I don't work with my detectives. I delegate to the detectives who do the investigation.
I understand, and I don't mean to ask you the same question over and over again. That wasn't a really good question. Let me get more specific about it. Here's what I meant, Sheriff, by have you ever worked with her? Have you ever, like for example, has she ever briefed you or your other senior staff on a case that she's working on? If you remember.
Well, we may have met sometimes at the scene of one of these investigations, but that was it. And she's doing the investigation.
Was Marie Tromby involved in the Lovejoy investigation?
I don't recall.
Was David Tromby involved in the Lovejoy investigation?
I don't know at that time what his position was.
Did Tom Lovejoy sue you after he was acquitted for animal cruelty charges by a jury of his peers?
I'm not sure it was a jury. I don't have all the facts.
It could have been a judge?
Could have been a justice of the peace.
Good point.
So I'm not sure how that situation occurred.
Well, let me rephrase it. Did Tom Lovejoy sue you after he was acquitted for charges of animal cruelty?
I believe he did.
What do you think of that lawsuit?
That's the way the system works.
Well, was it a valid lawsuit or an invalid lawsuit?
I don't have an opinion.
So he sued you and your wife, didn't he?
Yes.
And you don't have an opinion as to whether or not it was a valid or invalid lawsuit, Sheriff?
I'm not going to comment on the results. I still stand by that my detectives did a good job.
So you still stand by what your detectives did?
They did a good job.
And you stand by that good job, right?
Yes.
Now, did the county pay Mr. Lovejoy several $100,000 after he sued you and your wife in federal court for false arrest and malicious prosecution?
I don't know what the charges were.
Well, what
You said
happened to the
false
lawsuit?
arrest. I don't know. I don't know what the charges were, but I do know that that case was settled.
Did you approve of the settlement? It was against you.
I understand, but that's out of my realm. That's up to the county and the Judiciary Committee to make that decision.
I understand, Sheriff, but my question was a little bit more specific than that. Did you approve of the settlement of Mr. Lovejoy's lawsuit against you and your wife?
What do you mean by approve? I wrote approved?
No, well,
Or did I agree?
yeah, did you agree?
No.
Did you think it was a good thing or did you think it was a bad thing? Were you for it or were you against it?
Well, I was against the lawsuit.
Okay, so, and were you against the lawsuit settlement?
It wasn't my decision.
Did you make your opinion known that you thought the lawsuit was invalid?
I'm not sure if I discussed that or my people discussed that with the appropriate officials.
Did you read the lawsuit?
I don't recall. I think we're talking years ago.
You're right,
I don't recall.
Sheriff, you're right. The lawsuit was resolved several years ago. I believe, and I'll check at the break, that it was resolved in 2011, but it could have been 2012. But I'll check. When you're sued, Sheriff Arpaio, do you read the lawsuit?
Normally do.
And you just don't remember whether or not you read Mr. Lovejoy's lawsuit?
I didn't say either way. I said I didn't recall, but I would imagine I did, but I don't recall.
Okay. Did you read any of the judge's orders in the lawsuit?
I don't recall.
Now, when Mr. Lovejoy was charged, was he charged with intentional conduct or reckless conduct or negligent conduct or what?
I don't recall.
Isn't it true that he forgot his police dog in the back of his police vehicle in the summertime here in Arizona, and the dog died of some type of heat exposure?
In general terms, I do recall that, yes.
Was it your belief that Officer Lovejoy intentionally left the dog in his police vehicle to die of heat exposure?
Once again, my detectives have all the facts on that, and the reports were done, and I don't remember all the facts to answer your question.
Have you ever disciplined any of your subordinates for falsely accusing someone of committing a crime?
I don't recall doing that. It could have been done by the subordinates or the internal affairs, but I don't recall.
Now, Sheriff, as our sheriff, you have a lot of power, don't you?
You use the word power?
Yeah, you have a lot
Well,
of power.
No, I have a lot of jurisdiction to be concerned with, and running the third largest sheriff's office in the country. So I don't like the word of power.
Well,
I serve the people. I don't use power in that sense. If you, I don't know what you mean by power. Authority, I would use the word authority.
Okay.
That's the way I look at it.
I understand.
Authority.
I understand. Well, let's use your term. As our sheriff, you have a lot of authority, don't you?
Yes.
And part of that authority is you have the authority to arrest people and put them in jail until they see a judge, right?
The authority goes down to the arresting officer that's certified by the state that gives them that authority.
But those, well, your office has the authority to arrest people and incarcerate them until they see a judicial officer, correct?
Yes.
And that's the foundation of America, Sheriff, is freedom, right?
Yes.
And incarcerating somebody takes away their freedom, right?
Yes.
And that's super important, right?
Yes.
And you sure don't want your subordinates to take away somebody's freedom if that person is innocent, right?
Can you repeat, if that person is innocent? Is that what you said?
I'll repeat the question, Sheriff. You don't want your subordinates to arrest somebody and take that person's freedom away if that person is innocent, do you?
I would presume that there's a system where if you want to, say, take away their freedom by arresting someone and book them into the jail, I don't agree with your question. If there's an innocent ruling that comes later on, that's not the duties of my detectives. Their duty is to investigate. And booking them into jail, and what happens later on is not their interest, other than, you know, doing the investigation. So you're saying arresting someone that's innocent? I don't answer the question the way you're trying to give it to me. We arrest people that we have information through good investigations, have probable cause, and sometimes you book them to put cuffs on them and put them in jail. Now, what happens after that is a different situation.
Your officers have the authority to arrest, correct?
Yes.
And sometimes they exercise that authority, correct?
Yes.
And some of those individuals whom they arrest sometimes are adjudicated to be innocent, correct?
Yes.
One of your officers wouldn't intentionally arrest someone innocent, would they?
The innocent could come later on in the justice system.
Well, would one of your officers intentionally arrest someone who's innocent?
Check the form.
Once again, if they have a probable cause and the person turns out to be declared innocent by a jury or judge, I would presume, but they still acted in good faith and did their job.
Now, in your many decades in law enforcement, you've read about individuals who were arrested who in fact were factually innocent, haven't you? Maybe not arrested by your department, but maybe some other police department.
Check the form.
I don't know. That's never come across my
Never?
my system.
Well, okay, let me
No.
give you an example. And it's one that's close to your history, one that you're certainly not responsible for. Do you remember like the Temple murders here in Phoenix?
Yes.
And your predecessor was in charge of that?
Yes.
And some members of a religious group, I think they were Buddhist monks or something like that, apparently were brutally murdered. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And members of your department, not under you, you were a private citizen then, so please, Sheriff, don't think I'm trying to blame you for this. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not trying to blame you for this. You were not the sheriff. It was your predecessor. Your predecessor subordinates arrested these youths that they thought were guilty of the murders, and in fact, those kids turned out to be innocent and were subsequently released. You read about that, right?
Yes.
And in fact, I think you criticized your predecessor based upon that misadventure. Do you remember that? And your criticisms were valid, I thought.
I don't remember what my criticism was.
But that's an example, Sheriff Arpaio, of sometimes law enforcement officers mistakenly arresting someone who's innocent, right?
And I think I reaffirmed that several times. They had acted in good faith, did their job, did an investigation, came up with information, but it didn't turn out that way. So that's my answer to your question.
I understand.
And I wasn't involved in that.
I know you weren't, Sheriff, and I hope I didn't suggest that
No,
you
it
were.
doesn't matter. I'm still saying how law enforcement operates.
I understand. Now, Sheriff, you're constantly trying to improve your office's performance, aren't you?
Yes.
How do you do that?
Training, constant training that we do, experience, supervision, many facets.
Do you learn from mistakes?
I think we all should learn from mistakes.
Including you.
Yes.
Now, did you learn anything from your experience in the Lovejoy versus Arpaio case?
No.
Why not?
I think what I recall you're talking about years ago, but I figured this became a situation on legality and the laws and that type of thing.
Well, that I understand, Sheriff, but did you learn anything from it?
No, I didn't learn anything special from it.
Did you, have you ever studied the animal cruelty statute?
I've looked at it now and then.
When's the last time you looked at it?
I don't recall.
What did you do to prepare for your deposition? This deposition today?
I briefly talked to my lawyer. I believe it was, let me think now, a couple days ago
Where?
in my office.
For how long?
An hour and a half.
And when you say your lawyer, to whom are you referring?
That was me.
Okay, is that, who's your lawyer?
Actually, I've had so many of them, I'm a little confused.
Do you know this guy's name?
Yeah.
What's his name?
What's
Do you know his name?
Wait a minute.
Okay.
It's just skipping me his name. I know his name, but right now I can't recall it.
knows.
Okay.
This is my first time I've met my very, very professional, excellent attorney.
Okay. The first time you met him was the other day?
I believe it was the other day.
Okay.
That's why I'm having, but I've talked to him, I believe, by telephone
Okay.
a
Now,
while back.
when you met with him at your offices, do you keep a schedule of all your meetings
No,
that's in writing?
no.
So if I wanted to find out how our sheriff, the sheriff of Maricopa County, spent his day, could I get like a document from your office that like tells me how you spent your day, how you spent your week, like a calendar like I have on a computer or hard copy?
Well, first of all, I don't have computers. I don't have all your iPads. Let's get that. I don't have emails. Let's get that straight right away,
Yes, sir.
okay?
Yes.
But I do have a secretary.
What's her name?
Amy.
What's her last name? I'll keep it private.
Well,
What's her last name, Sheriff?
I'm trying to think. You got me, I got a good memory.
I know.
Now you're asking
Sheriff,
me
I'm not
now.
trying to embarrass you. If you don't remember, we can move on. Now, Sheriff, if I wanted to find out
I will
how
t-
you spent
yeah.
your day,
I will tell you that there is a record on what I may do the next week. But it doesn't say everything because I'm a busy guy. Things happen during the day. But there would be a record on a meeting maybe that I would be going to and that. But there is no record about nuts and bolts of my office.
I understand. Now, Sheriff Arpaio, so you don't have a calendar.
No.
When you go to work in the morning, like, how do you know what your schedule is? Like, whether or not you have appointments on that particular day, for example, with your lawyer, Jeff Leonard?
Because my secretary would give me a little note what I plan on doing that day. But it doesn't tell anything because that's just, of course, I had a note that I should be here at 10 o'clock.
I understand. Now, you met with Mr. Leonard the other day.
Yes.
What day was that?
I think it was 2 days ago.
So that would have been Tuesday or Monday?
2 days ago.
Tuesday?
Today is Thursday. So I believe it was Tuesday.
Okay. And what time was your meeting?
I believe it was in the afternoon.
Do you
Maybe
remember?
2 o'clock or
And how long did the meeting, when did the meeting end? What time did the meeting end?
like I say, I believe it was an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours.
So it ended around 4 p.m.?
To the best of my recollection.
Okay. Did you review any documents at that meeting?
I think we reviewed a couple.
That's a
of
yes or no question.
Yes.
What documents did you review?
Okay, that I'm going to instruct him not to answer. That's an invasion of my work product. I mean, you can get at it a different way, but to ask him what documents I prepared for him to review is an invasion of my work product. That's the Sport versus Peel case.
I don't agree, but if you're instructing him not to answer?
Yes.
Okay. Sheriff Arpaio, do you know how a civil lawsuit is commenced?
I guess someone files it,
Someone files a complaint, right?
I would imagine.
Have you ever read the complaint in this lawsuit, the complaint of Austin Flake and Logan Flake against Maricopa County Joseph Arpaio and his spouse, that's a technical thing. We're not accusing your spouse of doing anything wrong, as you know, sir. And also, it's against your detective, Marie Tromby. Have you read that lawsuit?
I believe I did.
When?
Which one are you talking about? I think there was the one from your office.
Well, tell me which ones you've read.
I don't
Tell
know.
me which ones you're aware of.
I remember reading your lawsuit, which, if I recall, was not a long one.
Is that the first one you read?
Yeah. I think I may have read one that came way back from the other attorney, Willichek.
Willichek?
I don't think he was involved somewhat.
Is he a friend of yours?
He represented me.
Did he
on
do a
some
good
cases.
job?
Yes.
Did you think he was an honest guy?
In those days, yes.
Now you've qualified it in those days,
Yes.
and you smiled. Has your opinion on that issue changed?
Yes.
Why?
Well, I think he's made some very, very strong statements and that I can think of against my people.
What has he said?
I think he questioned the character of my detectives. And that's all I'm going to say about that. With strong language.
Okay. Now, did you read the original complaint filed by Mr. Willinchek on behalf of Logan Flake and Austin Flake, those two young folks sitting to my left, against your office and yourself and your detective?
I may have. I believe this goes way back.
What do you think of it? When you read it, what was your reaction?
Well, I believe there was, if I can recall again, there was a lot of information that was not true.
What was untrue that you recall about the complaint that you read, brought by Logan Flake and Austin Flake against your office and you?
I can't give you all the facts. I can give you a couple points to strike out.
Just tell me what you remember.
Using the word that my detective committed perjury.
Which detective?
In fact, I believe it was Tromby.
David Tromby?
No, Maria Tromby. And I believe he connected me with that too. That's a different issue I'll be addressing. But this just struck me as very interesting. Now, I'm not sure if it was him or his partner, which happens to be his son. But once again, the tenure of that, I have to say yours is, I shouldn't say this, but professional.
Well, thank you. I try to be fair. I am an advocate. Now, Sheriff, do you stand by your detective, Marie Tromby?
Yes.
Do you think she did a good job in the investigation?
Yes.
Now, your officers are obliged by the law and also obliged by you, their boss, to tell the truth under oath, correct?
Yes.
And are you aware that Mr. Willinchek claimed that Ms. Tromby made misstatements to the grand jury regarding Logan Flake and Austin Flake?
You know, once again, I don't have the nuts and bolts of that. And the only reason I brought, that I remember, was the allegation of perjury.
Let me ask you this. 21, if someone's accused of 21 felony counts by the Maricopa County attorney, that's something super serious to that person, isn't it?
Which person?
To the accused. If if an individual is accused of perpetrating 21 felonies, that is something serious to that accused person, right?
I can't answer that question. I can't read the minds of people.
Well, let me ask it this way then. You wouldn't recommend 21 felony charges against someone unless you had very specific and serious evidence supporting those 21 felony counts, would you?
Just like any investigation, you get the probable cause, you do the investigation, you turn it over to the prosecutor to decide whether they want to further that investigation.
Someone's here to get car keys from somebody here?
What is a felony?
Designation of a violation of law.
Is it a trivial violation or a serious violation?
Depends, class 6, class 5, but it is, depends on which one you're talking about. When you look at the law, different phases of what felony is, but I'm sure it's something that would be important to anyone if they look at it that way.
Okay, this is a super simple question, Sheriff. It's not a trick question. Isn't it true that a felony charge is always a serious charge?
Check the form.
In general terms, regardless of
It's
what part.
If
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
felony, it's serious, right?
Check the form.
Yeah. I think misdemeanors could be serious too, but yeah,
Felony is more serious than a misdemeanor, right?
as far as sentencing goes, yes.
Isn't it true, Sheriff Arpaio, that if you're convicted of a felony in the state of Arizona, you can't even vote anymore?
That's correct.
And isn't it true that if you're convicted of a felony in Arizona, you can't serve on a jury anymore?
Yes.
I've read a little bit about your background, and it makes me think of ancient Rome and ancient Greece. Isn't it true that in the ancient world, the two hallmarks of citizenship were the right to vote and the right to serve on a jury? Is that true?
Objective form and foundation.
Is that your understanding? That two foundations of citizenship are the right to vote and the right to be a juror.
Form and foundation.
That's one of them, yeah.
So if you're a felon, some of your rights of citizenship are taken away, right?
Yes,
And you can also be sent away to prison, right?
yes.
Now, someone who's accused of 21 felony violations of the animal cruelty statute in Arizona could be sent to prison, right?
Yes,
And that would be a very serious thing, right?
yes, and people on misdemeanors can be sent to jail too.
Yeah, but not for as long, right?
I don't know.
You don't know?
That's up to the judicial system.
Isn't it true, Sheriff Arpaio, that if you're convicted of a misdemeanor, the most under the law that you can serve is 6 months and under?
Up to a year, I believe.
It's up to a year in your okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And felony, what's the limit for that?
I guess it could be a year or on.
Could be longer?
Yes.
Now, if someone were convicted of 21 felony violations of the cruelty to animals statute in Arizona, how long could they be sent to prison?
I don't know. That's up to the the judicial system.
Could be a long time though, right?
Yes.
Now, does your office make recommendations to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you recommended that Logan Flake and Austin Flake be prosecuted for 21 violations of the Arizona Animal Cruelty Statute?
My detectives that were knowledgeable about the case.
They recommended.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now we have it that your detectives recommended that Logan Flake and Austin Flake be prosecuted for 21 violations of the Animal Cruelty Statute. I got that. But I have a different question, Sheriff Arpaio. And it's a simple question. It is not a trick question. I understand you testified what your subordinates did. Now I want to ask you what you did. Did you recommend that Logan and Austin Flake be prosecuted for 21 felony counts of animal cruelty?
My detectives handling this case recommending that along, I believe, county attorneys that they were in constant contact with.
But you didn't recommend it?
No, I didn't recommend it.
Were you against
I mean,
it?
I'm not against it, but no, that was their decision on any investigation.
And you were separate and apart from that decision?
I didn't contest it, that this was their recommendation. They know the case. I didn't know the case.
So it was their recommendation, not yours.
Yeah, it was theirs, and I believe they had county attorneys working with them.
Okay. Why don't we take a lunch break right now?
This ends Media 2 in the deposition of Sheriff Joseph Arpaio, off the record at 12:46 p.m.